So when you hear the name Sally Ride, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably a pioneering astronaut, right? A huge symbol for a changing world. And you're not wrong. But that's really just the beginning of an absolutely incredible story. So today, let's go beyond the headlines and really get to know the person behind the icon.
Yeah, this is the image, the one so many of us recognize. A totally confident, focused astronaut, right on the verge of making history. It's such a powerful moment, captured right before she would completely change the face of American space travel forever. And there it is, the headline that defined her public legacy. On June 18, 1983, Sally Ride shattered one of the highest glass ceilings there was, becoming the very first American woman to actually leave the planet. Look, that achievement alone is just monumental, there's no question. But it's the journey to that seat in the shuttle that really shows you who she was. So, what kind of person becomes a pioneer like this? Well, the answer is way more complex and, frankly, more fascinating than you probably think. You see, before NASA was even on her radar, Sally Ride was already living this extraordinary life, chasing excellence down two totally different and incredibly demanding paths. I mean, just look at this. It's kind of wild, right? On one hand, she was a nationally ranked tennis player. I'm talking so good, she almost went pro. And on the other hand, she was this brilliant physicist at Stanford, just diving headfirst into astrophysics. It's that unbelievable combination of elite athletic discipline and pure intellectual horsepower that made her so unique. And the crazy thing is how fast this all happened. She's finishing up her PhD at Stanford, and she just happens to see an ad in the student newspaper for NASA. So she applies, along with more than 8,000 other people. And just a year later, bam, she's chosen, one of the first 6 women ever to be accepted into the astronaut corps. Okay, so making the cut was one thing, but actually flying the mission? That meant she had to face a kind of public scrutiny that none of the male astronauts ever had to deal with, not even close. Just try to put yourself in her shoes for a second. You are a highly trained physicist and an astronaut about to go to space, and this is what the media asks you. They asked about makeup, about whether she'd cry if something went wrong. This quote just perfectly captures the absurd, sexist filter people were looking through at the time. But this was the reality. Not some silly caricature, but an absolute expert at work. Here she is on the flight deck, a calm, competent mission specialist in charge of unbelievably critical and complex work hundreds of miles above the Earth. This is the truth behind those ridiculous headlines. And let's be super clear, her job up there was not symbolic. On both of her missions on the Challenger, her main role was to operate that incredibly complex robotic arm. She wasn't a passenger, she was a critical operator, deploying and grabbing satellites, a job that takes just immense skill and precision. So across her 2 flights, she logged over 343 hours in space. This wasn't some one-and-done photo op. She was a seasoned, experienced astronaut. You know, after her time in space, you could argue that Sally Ride's most important work for NASA actually happened right here on the ground, during some of the agency's absolute darkest days. Just stop and think for a second about the kind of trust this shows. After the Challenger disaster in '86, she's put on the Presidential Commission to figure out what happened. Then, years later, after the Columbia tragedy, they call on her again. She was the only person to serve on both of those investigations. Her integrity was just that respected. And she was absolutely vital. During the Challenger investigation, she quietly passed some key info about the O-rings, how they failed in the cold, to another commissioner. It was a discreet, courageous act that helped steer the investigation toward the truth, even when that truth was really painful for NASA. For me, this is one of the most powerful stories about her character. The engineer who warned about the O-ring problem before the launch, Roger Bozjoli, was basically treated like an outcast. But Sally Ride was the only public figure who supported him. She went up and hugged him in public, a simple gesture that just spoke volumes about her integrity and her empathy. After she left NASA, she dedicated her life to a whole new mission, firing up the next generation and, as it turns out, living a life of quiet authenticity. She really understood the power her story had, and she wanted to use it for good. This quote just says it all, doesn't it? It wasn't just about her own journey anymore. It was about making sure that path was wide open for all the other kids who looked up and saw those same stars she did. And this wasn't just talk. She put that passion into action. She co-founded Sally Ride Science to create really cool, engaging science programs with a real focus on keeping young people, especially girls, excited about science and tech. She was literally building the pipeline for the next generation of explorers.
And then, when she passed away in 2012, her obituary, which she helped write, revealed a final, profound truth that she'd guarded her entire public life. Her loving partner of 27 years, Tam O'Shaughnessy.
And with that one sentence, another barrier was quietly, powerfully broken. In death, she became the first known LGBTQ astronaut. It just added this whole other layer of courage to her incredible story. She was a pioneer in more ways than most of us ever even knew.
This image, it's just so moving. The very next year, President Obama awarded Sally Ride the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's the nation's highest civilian honor. And here is her partner, Tam O'Shaughnessy, accepting it for her. A final, public acknowledgement of their life together and of Sally's immense contribution to us all.
So when you look back at her entire life, the athlete, the physicist, the astronaut, the investigator, the educator, the partner, it really forces you to ask a bigger question. What does it really mean to be a pioneer? Sally Ride's story tells us it's not just about being the first one through the door. It's about courage, it's about integrity, and it's about holding that door open for everyone who comes after you.